Ricky and Armstrong and Aaron Marbry. Tales from 2006. Written from Greg Huffman. When I arrived back in Tennessee in July of 2006, I ended up moving in with Ricky after only staying with Dave at his rustic farmhouse for mayhaps a week or so. There was no way I was getting a job around where Dave lived out in the boonies, so I decided to move back in with Ricky in Knoxville, Tennessee. He was staying in some duplex that was rented to him by his boss, Ray. I was working my first job at KFC, but released about 3 days after having it. I was hired on August 31st, and then I dropped a whole 32 batch of chicken all over the floor. They never really fired me, but I was in my probationary period. They just never updated my schedule again after that, even though I kept calling. One day, while I was in walking back from KFC, which was probably September 1st or somewhere around there, I saw Ricky carrying Aaron on his back down the street. They were both drunk, and Aaron walked into someone's lawn and lay down as if he was going to just pass out where he lay. Eventually, Ricky and I probably picked him up off the lawn. I say probably because I'm filling in the blanks, similar to how Gestalt psychology fills in visual patterns you encounter. When we all went walking to Carolyn's house, which was David's girlfriend at the time, she was staying in a trailer that was about 15 to 20-minute walk from our duplex. We did nothing of note there, but we found a shopping cart right before going down the inclined slope of a road that leads to her house, and I released the cart. Ricky went chasing after it in fear that it would hit a car. One thing I appreciate about Ricky is that despite the fact he can tend to be an asshole, at least he would keep me out of trouble to some extent when I was younger. Later that night, Aaron, Ricky, and I tried to get some fast food, probably from the same Wendy's I applied at. They wouldn't let him go in, and when they tried to go to the drive-thru, they were told they couldn't because they had no vehicle. So they broke into some junkyard to try to steal a car. But when they threw a rock through the window of the automobile, it set off an alarm and they took off. You know, this is a bit off topic, but I'm reminded of the time I was with Rick at his house and I tried to order delivery. When I gave them the address, they said it had been blacklisted and they could send someone out. Because the person's address hadn't come to the door the last time they had ordered from the place, it wasn't like we had always ordered from the same place. So either I just specifically called a bad choice, or he had done this a few times with other food places. His reply: "Don't worry about it, I'll just give them a few extra bucks next time I order from them and it will be forgiven." I'm going to guess the day of this next event, and I'll say, September 23rd, 2006. That's just a gut feeling. I'm positive it had to be before October, though, but I could be wrong. It was most likely late September, though. Carolyn and Dave are having a get-together with some pals, and Marky is there. Marky is a 16-year-old dude who was the son of the guy that goes by Smurf, that lived next to Dave. Marky had long blonde hair, was clean-shaven, and he was in decent shape from lifting weights. He had muscles, but was on the shorter side. Shorter than me. I'm around 5'9". At the party, someone there said they were so glad that Ricky wasn't there. Did I mention I can be kind of a subtle dick? Maybe not so much anymore, but on this particular day, I thought it'd be entertaining to go back to the duplex and invite Ricky over. Before too long, Ricky was over there, and he was out swaying in the driveway, shuffling back and forth with his pants down, trying to take a piss. I think he might have even been holding a plate of food in his hand as he did so. I was behind him, but not right behind him. Don't get any homoerotic ideas, and laughing my ass off. I'm tempted to say that it was Marky that said he was glad Ricky didn't come over, because they would later be grappling in the driveway. I didn't get to see much, but Rick is pretty fucking strong and around 6'1", and Rick pinned him down, I think. I'm not sure if Dave separated them or what happened, but Rick and Marky came back in and were all planning to spend the night there. Rick would cause Marky to start crying because he would tell him he was going to murder him in his sleep with his knife that he always carried around. Marky cried while Dave sat beside him and tried to console him. He tried to play Rick's threat by laughing. Marky said, "I'm trying to talk to you and I'm crying and you're laughing in my face." To be fair, Rick was a douche, but he wasn't that malevolent. Though he once got drunk in his duplex and started throwing a knife towards my direction to fuck with me. I'm tempted to say he gave me a bruise once from doing that, but I may be mistaken, and I hate to over-dramatize the story. Eventually, Rick passed out from being drunk. Aaron, Marky, and I decided to fuck with him. We grabbed some super glue that we found while rifling through Carolyn's shit and decided it would be some funny shit if we super glued Rick's ass cheeks shut. Now, we aren't fags or anything, so after squirting sticky substance into his anal area, Marky and Aaron got an opposing side to Rick and used their feet to push his cheeks together. For good effect, I came up with the bright idea that if he melted a piece of chocolate in the microwave and threw it down his pants so that he would think he shat himself. We went with it. Mission accomplished. Well, after that, we ran out of mischief to perform on Ricky's deadweight body, though I think maybe we wrote fag on his face in permanent marker or something. Now I remember. I wrote sex with pandas on his shoulder as well. Then we drew a swastika on his back, and Aaron wrote Nazi under it. Did I mention that Aaron can't spell? Anyway, Marky decided to borrow Carolyn's van to go to the store and get some cigarettes or something like that. They found the keys. We went to the van. As we were loading into the van, I got a bad feeling and decided to stay behind. I believe Aaron was pretty much drunk and out of it. He was in the passenger seat and pretty mellowed out, which is usual of Aaron. However, when they took off, I didn't want to stick around for Ricky to wake up, so I went back to the duplex. While walking back, I saw something going on at the duplex. It almost looked like someone was trying to break in. But I tend to be a paranoid person. I walked around for a bit, and then I returned, and I didn't see anything, so I went inside and passed out on the couch. I was awakened by Ricky when Ricky popped into the apartment. I think Dave was with him. He asked me if I knew anything about last night. He told me that he woke up and tried to fart, but nothing would come out. So he went into the bathroom and pried his ass cheeks apart, which ripped the hairs off of his ass. I'm not sure if he said something, some skin was ripped off, or, well, I don't know. He didn't mention the shit chocolate, but he joked about Aaron spelling Nazi wrong. Then he said, well, I'm sure glad you're here. I was afraid you went with them and you were in jail. We'd have probably let you sit in there a few days so that you learned your lesson. Apparently, instead of just going to the convenience store, they decided to head to God knows where until Marky crashed into an embankment or something in Crossville, which Google Maps tells me is 69.6 miles, which is 1 hour and 6 minutes and no traffic from Knoxville. Marky made up some bullshit story about how he moved Aaron out of the driver's seat and put him in the passenger seat after they crashed, and the cops believed it, because Marky didn't get shit and Aaron went to jail because of it. He's in jail a lot. Dave wanted me to talk to Carolyn about it since I was technically an accessory to the crime. I decided to preambulate up this inclined highway to build up my confidence. Walking releases endorphins and gives me courage to talk to people on the phone. Sometimes I finally called and told her that I was sorry, and that I didn't go with them, but I knew they had taken the van. I told her I was only aware that they were going to the convenience store and expected their return. She forgave me. I went with her and Dave, and they needed me to speak to an officer about the situation. But when he asked what kind of insurance she had, she said that the vehicle was uninsured. He said that that would be a problem. Later, Marky, Smurf, and I would meet up. Maybe Carolyn was there too, and we talked the situation out. I tried to get Marky to admit that it was his fault, but he wouldn't. I said we were at one point in relation to taking the van, and Marky thought that that was time to jump back at me and say, what? We, implying that I was involved, and I suppose that he wasn't used to someone being honest. I said, yes, I already told Carolyn about my involvement. He wanted to kick my ass for some time after that. Aaron made good on my defense by writing a letter of apology to Dave about what had happened, and then after getting out of jail, stealing another person's vehicle to get back to Knoxville. He was then promptly arrested again. The situation strained the relationship between Dave and Carolyn, and they stopped seeing each other. Sometime later, when Aaron finally got out of jail again, Ricky told him that he was going to get his revenge on him soon, at the time when Aaron passed out in Dave's Chevy Blazer. Ricky put caulk down Aaron's shoes and down his clothing. He put silicone on his head, covering his hair. When Aaron woke up, he immediately ran into the bathroom and jumped into the shower. Aaron said he realized his mistake because when the water hit his scalp, he could feel his whole head tighten into a silicone helmet. Aaron's 35-year-old girlfriend, Rebecca, had to sit him in a bathtub and pull it all out by hand. They tried to call a hardware store about what had happened for solutions, but when they explained the situation, the guy on the phone just laughed and laughed and laughed for minutes. After they had made up, a prostitute ended up at our house on October the 29th. By this time, I moved back in with Dave. Dave had moved out of the dilapidated farmhouse and was also renting a house from Ray. I don't remember how they found her, but Dave likes to pick up all kinds of strays from time to time, and it wasn't with the intention of fucking her. Anyways, she was fat, and she only had one tooth, and, well, that's really all I can think of, so I guess I won't hit that magical third item that spices up a description. Rick started talking to her and ascertained that she was a prostitute. I don't think they knew it until inquiries were made. Rick asked how much she charged for a blowjob. She said $15. He only had $5. Dave slaps down a $10 bill for him. Did I mention that Dave is my stepfather? I only have a sheet curtain over my door, and I'm listening to what's going on, and Rick appears in my doorway after throwing open the curtain with his wrench in hand. I sit up in bed and look at him and say, "Fuck no. No, you don't." He turns to his left with his rest. He turns to his left, which is the restroom, which also only has a sheet over it. I listen to her blow him for a while, and eventually she begs him to fuck her, and he does. After a while, they return to the kitchen, which is the next room over. Rick tells her that she took his virginity, but she says, "I doubt that." Dave eventually passes out, and Aaron is talking to Ricky and Rick. From time to time, he throat fucks the chick. Aaron gets jealous, and she lets him fuck her for free. They start having a three-way. Rick said that when he was throat fucking her, he looked back and saw Aaron pounding it and didn't even know that was happening until he saw that. They asked the prostitute who had the biggest dick, and apparently Rick won that contest. I think Rick passed out not much longer after that, and Aaron took over. I heard her moaning, "Aaron, Aaron," for a while. Then after a while, she said, "I'm full of cum." I think Aaron came in her twice. When Aaron woke up the next morning, he was horrified by what lay next to him. We were sitting on the couch in the living room, and a prostitute walks in looking all fat and one-toothed in the light of day and says, "Man, you guys blew out my back last night." We dropped her off at some taxi cab company or something. I think she was fucking one of the drivers. I had to sit next to her in the back seat. When she left, we calculated that she fucked them for 3 hours and that she made less than minimum wage doing it, since it was only $5 an hour. The next day, we, minus Aaron, went to eat at Hardee's. There were old people all around us, and we were sitting in the middle of the establishment. Ricky says with some degree of loudness, "Damn, I can't believe we fucked that fat prostitute last night." Then I started stirring some white sauce. I want to say it was tartar, but why would I have tartar sauce at Hardee's? You know what? Actually, I remember sitting in a bench instead of at a table on that occasion, so I think it was at Captain D's on a different day. Into some ketchup. I was stirring tartar sauce into some ketchup. Then I asked, "Is this what the prostitute's vagina looked like?" I think everyone lost their appetite. Aaron would later say that he always knew he and Ricky would eventually run a train on a girl together. Also, one time Aaron's girlfriend helped Aaron sneak drugs into prison by sticking them up her ass. Ricky wanted to make fun of him for that, but Aaron wasn't fazed. I think that was in 2009, though. Ricky and I once spent the night on the graveyard together. We called it Visiting the Arps, since that was the family name. We even brought sheets, pillows, and blankets, and I recorded it. However, that was technically in March of 2007, and it didn't feature Aaron at all. Nor is it really that funny. So fuck that story. The end.
Journal entry for October 13, 2017. Written by Greg Huffman. Narrated by Dave Cunningham. 3:05 p.m. 3:05 p.m. Oh, what a day, what a goddamn day. A day fitting for a Friday the 13th. Chelsea and I drove to King Scooper so that we could obtain a bite to eat, and we altered our plans slightly and ended up going to Subway. As we were leaving, Chelsea pointed out a junkie chick who needed her car jumped off. The reason I know she was a junkie was not only because she was petite as fuck and tattooed, but Chelsea even spied needle tracks in her arms. We pulled up next to her and we set shit up. No luck with her car after multiple attempts. Chelsea kept going on about how bad she felt for the woman. Then her junkie friend Patty approached to ask Chelsea for a smoke. Shortly afterwards, Chelsea realized her phone was missing. She went through the car contents looking for it. Then she told me she was pretty positive one of the junkies stole it, and I should subtly go about calling the cops. She also thoroughly checked Subway, but it wasn't there. We had Chelsea's mother's GPS track the phone, and the signal was still at the parking lot where we were. She checked it again as the junkies walked off, Chelsea tailing them into the grocery store, and she said she thought it had moved a bit. I called the cops. The cops took forever and ever. Finally, I saw the junkie friend rush back out to her car, so I jumped in my car so as not to look too suspicious. She cried out about her friend having an overdose inside the store. I assumed it was to cover up for her friend being a thief. I saw her rummage through her car and go back in. As a fire truck pulled up, I decided to go inside. Two cops, one a chaplain, were walking inside. I considered halting and accosting them, but I waited and followed in after them. The officer stopped at the bathroom door. I got their attention and said, "I have some pertinent information on what's going on." The cop immediately turned his attention to me. I told him the full story about jumping their car off and such. They took my ID and asked me for a description of her phone, and being unable to provide that adequately, I asked if I could go look for my girlfriend. I had the management called on the intercom and told the lady at customer service about what was going on. "Does management know?" she asked. I told her I assumed they did, but she went to tell them anyway. I went back to the car a while to wait and look around for Chels, but then when I went back into the grocery, I saw her speaking with the cops. She had apparently been on the other side of that door while I was speaking to the officer, there to save the woman's life when she had the overdose. She figured the first place junkies would go while being under the burden of such stress would be to shoot up in the restroom. Chelsea described to me how after she tracked the purloiners to the restroom, she saw an open stall. The woman was passed out with a needle and a spoon on her chest, turning all blue. Chelsea began shaking her and yelling for her to wake up. While this was going on, someone came inside the restroom, took a piss, and left nonchalantly. "Hey, when you gotta go, you gotta go." Thankfully, junkies tend to be rather petite, so Chels first picked her up and propped her up against the corner. Pilfered of her own ability to call for emergency services, the addict being hoisted by her own petard, she departed the restroom and started yelling for help. One woman that passed by, when asked if she would call 911, threw her hands up and said, "I don't fuck with junkies," and proceeded to walk away. Chelsea returned to the restroom. The woman was starting to puke, so Chelsea ameliorated the situation by turning her head to the side to avoid choking on her own vomit, and then listened to her heartbeat. There wasn't one. She had stopped breathing as well. Chelsea then ran through the store screaming. Finally, someone eventually had called an ambulance. Chelsea brought up her sympathies for a junkie nearly dying. In fact, she is concerned that she may still be brain dead. I felt guilty because in the heat of the situation, I said, "Well, it couldn't have happened to a nicer person." Chelsea and I walked back out to our car, and an older black woman called out to us, "Hey, did you lose a phone?" She told us she spotted it in the parking lot and ran it back into Subway. "How ironic," I said, and ran in to get it. "Some colored woman brought the phone in here from the parking lot," the old man who had served us moments earlier said. Adrenaline dump overriding my social anxiety apprehension, I blurted out, "Want to hear a wild story?" and related everything to him. Because we suspected a woman being a thief, we ended up saving her life. What kind of life lesson is that? However, as we drove off, we started to realize a few things, and I felt less guilt. Chelsea had tracked down Patty's friend, who had abandoned her overdosed pal in the ladies' room. She was looking at an assortment of products, probably trying to steal them. Chelsea's words. Chelsea told the friend about the overdose. "Why were you following us?" "Because you stole my phone." The junkie was more defensive about the phone than caring for the fate of a friend. Chelsea said she really didn't give a fuck about the phone at this particular moment. The addict offered to let Chelsea see her purse to prove she didn't steal anything, except she had to run out to the car real quick first. That must have been when I witnessed her returning to her car. God damn it, I should have paid attention to her location when this happened. She must have known we had just come out of the subway, either by seeing us or overhearing us talking about finding her lost phone there. What makes the most sense is that she tossed the phone onto the ground proximal to the subway around this time. When she finally did show the purse to Chelsea, Chelsea noticed that the woman had 3 different cell phones already. Chelsea, sweet peach that she is, told the cops she didn't care about pressing charges against the woman. To her credit, she gave up any thought of her stolen phone the moment she saw a woman dying. She held nothing against her in vengeance. We had a philosophical discussion on the way home about it. When I asked her what percentage of junkies she thought thieves, she said 90% of them, but she understood a junkie's compulsion to steal. I told her if she didn't understand why people dislike junkies still, then she must also recognize the inconsistencies with her own thoughts on pedophiles and serial killers, also dangerous victims of compulsion. I, of course, am a determinist that does believe in free will and recognizes the unjustness, but pragmatism of justice. The further discussion of our philosophical dialect regarding the situation is not necessary to expand upon here. I will just say that while the day has caused Chelsea to lose her faith in humanity a bit, seeing how no one gives a fuck, and how when people have a day planned out they are unwilling to swerve from the expectations of their route for the most urgent moments of someone else's life, it has also given both of us some meaning to our day. The police even gave Chelsea the dying druggie's possessions to sort through for her phone, and Chelsea spotted the dope bag and threw it away so she wouldn't be arrested. If Patty ever wakes up again, I hope this experience is edifying for her. The woman that she stole from not only saved her life, but put herself at legal risk to prevent her from going to jail. One further irony that Chelsea just pointed out to me was that we had just recently been discussing the merits of taking a person's life, and it would give us meaning to do so. And shortly afterwards, we find meaning in doing just the opposite. A life was saved. Hopefully.